So, there I was, just a regular Saturday morning, feeling a bit off but not really sure why. I had a tea time at this little course just outside town, something casual to unwind. My wife had been distant lately, but I chalked it up to her just being busy with work. She'd been running herself ragged with her new job, and honestly, I didn't think much of it. A little space never hurt anyone, right? Plus, we've been married for 5 years, so I figured we'd hit a rough patch. Happens to everyone. But even with that nagging feeling in the back of my mind, I was ready for the game. Golf had always been my way of clearing my head. It was just me, the course, and a ball to hit. Simple. As I made my way to the first hole, I didn't think much more about anything else. Everything seemed fine, for now. Then I took my shot. It was a disaster. I lined up, took a deep breath, and swung. But instead of the smooth strike I was expecting, my club hit the ball completely wrong. The thing sliced way off to the right, like it had a mind of its own. It rolled into a ditch next to the fairway. I muttered to myself, cursing under my breath. Typical, right? I wasn't having the best round, but that's part of the game. But then, things got weird. I thought the ball was done for, stuck in the muck. But, of course, fate had other plans. It bounced off a rock, mind you, then ricocheted into a nearby tree. What the hell? This wasn't even a fluke, it was starting to feel like a setup for a bad movie. The ball then took a wild, slow roll down a hill. I watched, half in disbelief, as it rolled towards the green, and straight into the hole. It dropped in like it was the most natural thing in the world. A hole-in-one. On a completely messed up shot. I just stood there, staring, feeling like I'd entered some alternate universe. I stood there, staring at the hole, and I think I stood for a good minute before it even hit me what had just happened. A hole-in-one. For someone who had been playing for years without so much as a lucky bounce, this was absurd. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I hit the ball wrong, and somehow, the universe decided to make it one of the best shots of my life. I should have been celebrating, right? Calling my friends, sharing the news. But I didn't feel that rush of excitement that people always describe when they get a hole-in-one. Instead, all I felt was this weird emptiness. Like the universe had played some sick joke on me. I pulled out my phone and texted my wife. Hole-in-one. Just happened. Crazy, huh? It felt like a stupid thing to say, but I didn't know what else to do. I thought she'd be thrilled, maybe even call to congratulate me. But when I looked down at my phone a few minutes later, there was no reply. Not even a thumbs up. That's when I started feeling it, the shift. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just the lack of a reply. It was the silence that followed. Normally, she'd call or text immediately when something big happened, especially something like a hole-in-one, which was a big deal in our circle of friends. But this time, nothing. It made me second-guess everything. Was she busy? Or was she avoiding me? I tried to push it aside, focusing on the game. But the nagging feeling didn't go away. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right with her. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I hadn't really been connecting with her the past few weeks. Her distance wasn't just from work, there was something else. Something I didn't want to admit. By the time I finished the round, I was over it, well, not over it, but just resigned to the fact that maybe it was all in my head. But that hole-in-one? It felt like it was mocking me. A perfect shot in a round full of chaos. Like the universe was taunting me. I texted her again when I got to the car, "Can we talk later? I feel like something's off." This time, I expected a response. At least an answer to acknowledge I wasn't crazy. But the reply came later, after I got home. It wasn't what I was expecting. I got home, tossed my clubs into the garage, and just sat there for a minute, staring at the phone in my hand. I knew what was coming, but I wasn't ready for it. The message from her was short, to the point, and cold: "We need to talk." My heart sank. That's never a good sign. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach, like everything I thought I knew was about to come crashing down. I walked into the house, and there she was, sitting on the couch, looking at her phone. She barely glanced up when I walked in. I don't know why, but it felt like she was avoiding me on purpose. Something about the way she wouldn't look me in the eye made everything feel wrong. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, but the words felt forced. "What's up? You okay?" She sighed, put her phone down, and finally looked at me. There was a weight in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. I could tell she was struggling with something she didn't want to say. "Actually," she said, her voice shaky, "we need to talk about us." That's when the ground started to shift beneath me. My mind was racing. "Us?" I echoed. The word hung in the air like a heavy fog. I didn't know what to expect, but I sure as hell didn't expect this. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and all I wanted was for her to tell me everything was fine, everything was okay. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice quivering. "And I think we need some space. I don't know if we're really happy anymore. I just feel like I don't know if I can do this anymore." I couldn't breathe. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. She was talking about us, about our marriage. Everything we'd built, everything I trusted, was crumbling in front of me. "I don't understand," I said, my voice trembling. "What do you mean? What's been going on? We've been fine, right? You've been distant, but I thought it was just work." She shook her head slowly, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not just that. There's someone else. I've been seeing someone. I'm so sorry." My world stopped. She said it so calmly, like she was reading off a script. It didn't even seem real. My brain couldn't process what she just said. Someone else. She was seeing someone else. I was crushed, torn apart. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. Not after everything we'd been through, not after 5 years of marriage. The betrayal was the last thing I ever expected. I was in shock, unable to think, let alone respond. I just stood there, completely frozen. And then, everything I had thought I knew about her, about us, was shattered. The silence in the room felt deafening after she spoke those words. It was like the air had been sucked out of the place, leaving just the two of us standing in this mess of brokenness. I couldn't even look at her. I stared at the floor, my mind scrambling to process what she'd just confessed. Someone else. The words kept repeating in my head, over and over, like a broken record. It didn't make sense. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this, after everything we'd been through? All the plans, the hopes, the promises? Gone. Who is he? I finally managed to choke out, the anger starting to creep in. My voice didn't sound like mine, like someone else was speaking for me. I couldn't contain the emotion building inside me. I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't plan it, but it's been going on for months." Months? That's all I could focus on. She'd been lying to me for months. And the worst part? I had been clueless. I didn't notice the signs. The late nights, the distance, the coldness between us. How had I missed it? Was I really that blind? I stood there, trying to gather my thoughts, but everything felt like a blur. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to know the details. "Do you even love me anymore?" I asked, the words barely escaping my lips. "I don't know," she replied. I think I lost myself along the way. And I don't want to keep pretending." The finality in her words was like a knife to my chest. It hit me hard, worse than anything I'd ever imagined. I couldn't stay there anymore. I needed to get out. I needed to breathe. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, not caring about anything anymore, not even the hole-in-one I'd just made earlier in the day. Nothing felt real anymore. I slammed the door behind me and stepped into the night air, needing to put some distance between myself and everything that had just happened. My mind was spinning. I didn't even know where I was going. I just needed to leave that house, that conversation, and the betrayal that had just shattered everything I thought I knew. I got into my car, almost in a daze. The engine rumbled to life, but it felt like the sound was coming from far away. I had no destination in mind, just the need to escape, to get away from her, from the pain. As I drove aimlessly through the streets, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew it was her. I didn't even look at it. What could she possibly say at this point? Sorry? I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't need that. I couldn't believe I was in this position. 5 years. All of it gone, just like that. My thoughts kept going back to the hole-in-one. The universe gave me something ridiculous, something completely unexpected, and I thought it was a good sign. A reward for some small victory in my life. But now, it felt like the punchline to some cruel joke. A hole-in-one on a messed-up shot. Was this whole thing just another messed-up shot? Eventually, I found myself at a bar. It wasn't the place I usually went, but I needed to be somewhere that wasn't home. I needed to drown out the thoughts, the questions. I walked in, sat down at the bar, and ordered a drink. It felt like everything was moving in slow motion. As I took the first sip, I realized just how much I needed this. The alcohol was like a temporary escape, a numbness that I desperately craved. I didn't know what was next, but I knew I couldn't face her right now. Not with everything fresh in my mind. I wasn't ready to face the reality of what was happening. I wasn't ready to let go. The drink went down easy, the warmth spreading through me, but it didn't take away the coldness that had settled deep in my chest. I wasn't numb enough, not yet. My thoughts kept circling back to her, to what she'd said. Someone else. I couldn't stop thinking about it, couldn't stop imagining them together. What did he have that I didn't? What had I missed? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I glanced at my phone again. Another text from her. I opened it, half expecting more excuses, more guilt-tripping. Instead, it was short. I'm sorry. We need to talk more. Can we meet tomorrow? I felt the blood rush to my face. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it and moved on, but the temptation to respond was too strong. I typed back, my fingers trembling, what more is there to talk about? You've made your choice. The message sent before I could second-guess myself. I set my phone down and took another sip, trying to drown the rage, the sadness, the overwhelming sense of loss that kept washing over me. I was torn. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but the other part just wanted to disappear, to forget any of this ever happened. The bartender gave me a sideways glance as I stared into my drink, but I didn't care. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for at that point. The silence between us felt like the loudest thing in the room. I spent the rest of the evening there, nursing that same drink, lost in the haze of my own thoughts. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what I could do. The whole night was just a blur, but I couldn't escape the thought of facing her tomorrow. How could we even talk after everything? By the time I left the bar, I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. But I also knew one thing, I was going to have to face whatever came next. No more running. I woke up the next day with a pounding headache and a sinking feeling in my gut. I had hardly slept, and when I finally dragged myself out of bed, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. The text from her was still fresh in my mind, and part of me wanted to ignore it, pretend like everything was fine. But I knew I couldn't. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, a neutral place, somewhere public, though I had no idea if that would make things any easier. If anything, it felt more like a formality, like we were both playing parts in some kind of sad drama. I got there first and sat at a corner table, trying to keep my mind busy with anything other than the conversation that was about to unfold. But it was impossible. Every time I heard the door open, my heart skipped a beat, wondering if it was her. She walked in about 10 minutes later, and it hit me all over again. This woman, the one I trusted with everything, had completely shattered my world. She looked different, more composed than the night before, and I couldn't help but notice how she avoided my gaze. It stung. The person I'd once been able to read like a book was now a stranger. She sat down across from me, her hands fidgeting with the cup in front of her. I tried to say something, anything, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly, the words sounding rehearsed. "I know this is hard, but I want to explain. I owe you that much." I took a deep breath and finally looked at her, though it was hard to find the words. "What is there to explain?" I said, my voice quieter than I expected. "You've already told me everything I need to know." She winced at that, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt you more. I just didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you." It felt like a punch to the gut. She didn't want to lose me? How could she even say that after everything she'd done? My mind was racing, the hurt mixing with a kind of numb disbelief. "So you thought lying to me, betraying me, was the better way to handle this?" I shot back, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. She looked down, her eyes filling with tears. "I never meant for it to happen. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I could fix it before it got too far, but I couldn't." I stared at her, every word feeling like a dagger. "It's too late for that. You should have told me the truth earlier. You should have trusted me enough to talk to me before this all happened." She nodded, wiping her eyes, but I could see the finality in her expression. We were both here because the damage had already been done. There was no going back. The silence between us stretched out, heavy and suffocating. I didn't know what else to say, and at that moment, I wasn't sure I cared to hear anymore. The conversation seemed to drag on, but I couldn't focus on what she was saying anymore. Her words were just noise, like background static I was trying to tune out. I was hearing her, but not really listening. What was the point? What could she possibly say to make it better? I already knew the truth. She had already made her decision, and I had no choice but to face it. It wasn't that I was angry anymore, I was, of course, but mostly I felt this overwhelming numbness. The anger was buried under layers of confusion, heartbreak, and disbelief. I wasn't sure who I was anymore, who we were, or what to do with myself now. It wasn't just about her affair anymore, it was about everything we'd built together, everything that felt like it had been a lie. "So, what happens now?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. She looked up at me, her eyes red, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she really looked at me. "I don't know. I think we need to go our separate ways. I don't want to keep hurting you. I know this is painful. I'm sorry. Go our separate ways." It was a line I had heard before, but hearing it from her felt like a finality. I thought we were stronger than this. I thought we were invincible. But now, all of a sudden, everything felt fragile, like I could lose it all in an instant. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. The man who had been confident, who had everything under control, was gone. He had been replaced with someone who was struggling to keep himself together. I wasn't sure if I was ready to let go, but I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. Maybe I didn't have a choice. The pain was so raw, so fresh, that I almost didn't know what to do with myself. The life I thought I was living had come crashing down, and I was left with nothing but the shards of what used to be. But one thing was clear, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The beginning of rebuilding, of figuring out who I was without her, without us. "So, is that it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is there any way we can fix this?" She shook her head slowly, and it felt like the last of my hope slipped away. "I don't think there's anything left to fix." I felt a strange calmness wash over me. I didn't want to believe her, but I couldn't keep fighting anymore. She'd made her choice. And I had to make mine. I stood up, the finality of the moment settling in my bones. "I think you're right," I said, my voice steady now. "It's time for both of us to move on." The words felt heavy as I spoke them, but I knew it was the only way forward. There was no going back. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, the weight of everything still settling on my shoulders. But I could feel the urge to leave, to get out of that coffee shop and away from her. The last thing I wanted was to sit there, pretending that we could still make sense of this, when everything had already unraveled beyond repair. I turned to walk away, feeling her eyes on me, but not looking back. I wasn't sure if she wanted me to turn around, if she wanted some kind of closure or apology, but I knew that the only closure I was going to get was by walking out that door. As I left, I felt the cool air hit my face, a sharp contrast to the suffocating tension inside the shop. The world felt different, like I was stepping into it for the first time, unsure of where I was supposed to go or what I was supposed to do next. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep it together as I made my way to the car. I drove for hours. I had no destination, no clear plan. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to see the house we had shared, the one that now felt like a monument to everything I had lost. So, I kept driving, just to keep moving. I ended up on the outskirts of town, in a place I barely recognized. I pulled over to the side of the road, staring out at the landscape in front of me. Everything seemed distant, like I was watching it all from a movie screen. My life felt like it was happening in slow motion. It was in that moment, standing outside my car in the middle of nowhere, that I realized something. This wasn't just about the betrayal. It wasn't just about her affair. It was about me. About how I had let myself lose sight of who I was. I'd put everything into her, into us, and I had forgotten that I was my own person, someone worthy of respect, someone who deserved honesty. I had been so focused on fixing everything, on holding on to something that was already broken, that I didn't see the truth. I wasn't just hurt by what she had done to me, I was angry at myself for not noticing the signs, for not taking care of myself first. But in that moment of clarity, I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Not hope that things would go back to the way they were, but hope for what could be. What I could be. I wasn't the man who had been cheated on. I wasn't just the guy who'd been left behind. I was someone else now. Someone who could rebuild. I stayed in that spot for what felt like hours, just letting the weight of everything wash over me. The night was still and quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the stillness in a way that wasn't suffocating. It was almost like the world was giving me a moment to breathe, a break from all the noise that had been clouding my head for weeks. When I finally got back in the car, I didn't have a destination. But I knew I had to start somewhere. I had to begin taking steps forward, even if they were tiny ones. I couldn't stay stuck in that moment, stuck in the past. I had to keep moving. I called my best friend on the way home. He didn't know everything that had happened, only bits and pieces, but I needed someone to talk to. Someone who wouldn't judge me, who wouldn't look at me like I was some kind of victim. I needed someone who would just listen. "Hey, man," I said, trying to sound normal. "You around?" "Yeah, what's up?" His voice was light, but I could hear the concern underneath. "I need to talk," I said, my voice cracking a little. "Can you meet up?" He agreed, and within an hour, I was sitting across from him at a bar we used to go to all the time. He had this way of making everything feel a little lighter, even if the world around us was falling apart. I didn't waste time with small talk. I dove right into it. "She cheated on me," I said, the words finally tumbling out, a weight lifting off my chest just by saying them aloud. He raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt, letting me spill everything. And I did everything from the hole-in-one and the way she pulled away, to the conversation we'd had earlier that day. The betrayal, the hurt, the anger, and the sadness. I poured it all out, not holding anything back. When I finished, he just nodded, his face serious. "I'm sorry, man. That's a lot. But you're going to get through this. You're stronger than you think." I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if I was strong anymore. I had been so focused on holding it together for her, for us, that I hadn't really thought about what would happen if everything fell apart. "So what now?" I asked. "What do I do next?" He shrugged, a half-smile tugging at his lips. You start living again. You start doing things for you. You figure out who you are without her. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible. You've got to take the first step. The words hit me harder than I expected. I had been so caught up in what I'd lost, so stuck on the idea of trying to fix what was broken, that I hadn't even considered what might come after. It wasn't going to be easy. Hell, I wasn't even sure if I was ready. But I knew I had to try. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could. It wasn't easy. The first few days after that night felt like walking through thick mud. Every movement was slow, deliberate, like I was trying to push against an invisible wall that just wouldn't budge. My thoughts were still heavy with her, with the way everything had ended. I couldn't escape it, no matter what I did. Every quiet moment brought me back to the same questions. How did I not see it coming? How could I have missed all the signs? But slowly, I started doing the things I had put on hold for so long. I started taking care of myself again, eating better, sleeping better, forcing myself to get out of bed every day. I went back to the gym, something I had abandoned months ago. I started reading books again, things I used to enjoy before the weight of the relationship had overshadowed everything else in my life. I began picking up the pieces of who I was before everything went sideways. There were days where I felt okay, days where I thought maybe I was actually moving on. But then, there were the bad days, the ones where the memories hit hard, where I couldn't shake the thoughts of her with him. Those days, I would call my friend, or I would take a long walk to clear my head. Slowly but surely, though, the good days started to outnumber the bad ones. I wasn't moving on from the pain, I didn't expect to, but I was learning how to live with it. I was learning how to stand on my own again. And that was a win, even if it didn't feel like one at first. One of the hardest things was giving myself permission to let go. I kept telling myself that I wasn't just the guy who had been cheated on. That wasn't my identity. I was more than the man who had been betrayed. I was still me. Still capable of love, of trust, of happiness. I just had to find that part of myself again. It wasn't going to happen overnight. There wasn't some magical moment where everything clicked into place, but I began to feel a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in so long, hope. Not hope for her, or for us, but hope for myself. Hope that I could be whole again, hope that I could find peace in the middle of the mess. And with that hope, I started moving forward. I didn't have all the answers yet, and I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I was on the right path. I wasn't running anymore. I was facing everything, no matter how painful, and taking the next step. It wasn't the life I thought I would have, but it was mine. And that, for now, was enough. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the past few weeks. A lot of time reflecting on everything that happened, everything I went through. The pain, the heartbreak, the anger, it was all part of it. But what I've realized, as I've taken these steps toward healing, is that none of it was in vain. I'm not the same person I was when I first sat in that coffee shop with her. I'm not the person I was when I walked out the door that day, feeling like my world had just ended. I've changed. And honestly, I'm proud of how far I've come. The hardest part, by far, was letting go. Letting go of someone I thought I would spend my life with. Letting go of the future I thought we had. But I've learned that sometimes, you don't get to choose when things fall apart. Sometimes, life hands you a mess and all you can do is figure out how to make sense of it. The betrayal hurt more than anything I've ever experienced, but it taught me something important. It taught me that I have to trust myself more than I trust anyone else. That my happiness doesn't depend on someone else's choices or actions. That I can rebuild, even when I feel like I've lost everything. I won't pretend that I have all the answers now, or that I've completely moved on. There are still days when I think about her, when I wonder what might have been. But I'm learning to accept those thoughts and not let them control me. I'm learning that healing is a process, and that it's okay to take it one step at a time. To anyone reading this who's been through something similar, who's felt that gut-wrenching feeling of betrayal, I want to say this: you will get through this. It doesn't feel like it now, but you will. The pain won't last forever. You are strong enough to survive it, and stronger for facing it head-on. Take it one day at a time. Be kind to yourself. You don't have to have all the answers today, but you do have to keep moving forward. And eventually, you'll find peace. It's not the kind of peace that means forgetting, it's the kind of peace that comes from accepting the past and knowing that you are worthy of a future that's better than what you've lost. I don't know what the future holds for me, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. And that's the end of the story. I hope it hit all the emotional beats you were looking for. Let me know if you'd like to discuss anything further.